Anxiety, especially social anxiety, often feels like a relentless storm raging in our minds. But what if I told you that ancient wisdom holds the keys to navigating this storm? As the Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, we cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them. In today's world, where social interactions are more complex and overwhelming than ever, this idea couldn't be more relevant. In this video, we'll explore how the timeless philosophy of Stoicism offers practical tools to help you take control of your thoughts, shift your perspective, and build resilience against the fears that hold you back. Whether it's the constant worry of being judged, the fear of failure, or the struggle to connect with others, Stoicism provides a roadmap to reclaim your inner peace and face social anxiety with confidence. Let's uncover how these ancient principles can transform the way you approach your mind and your life. Social anxiety can feel like stepping onto a stage, only to realize the spotlight is on you, and every movement, every word seems magnified. It's that tightening in your chest before speaking to a group, the hesitation to join a conversation because you're replaying a dozen what-if scenarios in your head. At its core, social anxiety is the fear of being judged, humiliated, or rejected in a social setting. It's the unsettling discomfort that makes you second-guess your every action, weighing how others might perceive you. Now here's where Stoicism offers a powerful shift in perspective. The ancient Stoics believed that much of our emotional distress comes from focusing on things outside our control, like the opinions or reactions of others. Think about it. When we feel anxious in a social situation, it's usually because we're consumed by thoughts like, what if they don't like me? Or what if I say something stupid? All of these worries center on what others might think or do, things entirely beyond our control. The Stoics taught that true peace comes from turning our attention inward, focusing instead on what we can control, our own thoughts, beliefs, and actions. Epictetus, one of Stoicism's greatest teachers, captured this perfectly when he said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Social anxiety thrives when we let our minds spiral into worry about external judgments. But by bringing our focus back to what we can personally influence, we can start to loosen that grip. Understanding this dynamic is the first step toward addressing social anxiety. When you recognize that most of your fear comes from giving too much weight to external opinions, you can begin to reclaim your power. Imagine this: you're at a party and you feel that familiar wave of anxiety because you're worried about making a bad impression. Instead of diving into those anxious thoughts, what if you paused and asked yourself, what am I really afraid of here? Is it something I can control? Chances are you'd realize that the fear stems from trying to control how others perceive you, an impossible task. This isn't to say that you'll suddenly stop caring what people think. Humans are social creatures, and it's natural to seek connection and approval. But Stoicism helps us draw a boundary between healthy social awareness and over-attachment to the opinions of others. The more you practice this shift in focus, the more you'll notice that social anxiety starts to lose some of its intensity. So, as you reflect on your own experiences with social anxiety, ask yourself, how often are my fears tied to things outside my control? By understanding this root cause, you've taken the critical first step toward changing how you approach social situations. The next step, learning how to apply Stoic techniques to strengthen this internal focus, which we'll dive into shortly. How often do we stress over things we can't control? Think back to a time when you felt overwhelmed by social anxiety. Maybe it was before a presentation, a first date, or even just walking into a crowded room. Chances are your mind was consumed with thoughts like, what if I embarrass myself? Or what will they think of me? It's exhausting, isn't it? That endless cycle of worry over things that are completely out of your hands. This is where the Stoic principle of the dichotomy of control can be life-changing. Epictetus, one of the most influential Stoic philosophers, taught that we should clearly distinguish between what we can control and what we cannot. He explained it simply: some things are up to us and some things are not. Let's break that down. What's within our control? Our own thoughts, actions, and attitudes. These are the things we have power over, and what lies outside of our control? Pretty much everything else: the opinions of others, the outcome of events, even the weather. Yet, so often, we pour our energy into worrying about those external factors, neglecting the one thing we do have influence over: ourselves. Now, let's relate this to social anxiety. When you're in a social situation and anxiety creeps in, it's often because you're focusing on what's outside your control. You might worry about whether people will judge you, how they'll respond, or whether you'll say the right thing. But here's the truth: you can't control what someone else thinks about you. You can't control how they interpret your words or actions, and the harder you try, the more frustrated and anxious you'll become. What you can control, however, is how you respond to those thoughts and feelings. For example, instead of spiraling into, "What if I mess up?" thinking, you can remind yourself, "I can't control what they think, but I can control how I show up." By focusing your energy inward on your own mindset and actions, you take back your power. Here's a simple yet effective tip to practice this. The next time you feel social anxiety creeping in, pause and mentally divide the situation. Ask yourself, what parts of this are within my control and what parts aren't? For example, if you're worried about speaking in front of others, you can't control their reactions, but you can prepare yourself as best as possible. You can rehearse, take deep breaths, and approach the situation with a calm and grounded mindset. Shifting your focus to what you can control not only reduces anxiety, but it also helps you approach the situation with greater confidence. And here's a bonus: when you stop fixating on what you can't control, you free up mental bandwidth to focus on being present. Imagine going to a social event and, instead of obsessing over how others might perceive you, you focus on genuinely engaging with the people around you. Not only will you feel less anxious, but you'll also create more meaningful connections and enjoy the experience. The dichotomy of control is about liberating yourself from the impossible task of controlling the uncontrollable. It reminds you that your energy is precious and it's best spent on the things within your reach: your thoughts, your choices, and your actions. So, the next time you feel the weight of social anxiety, try practicing this principle. Let go of what's beyond your influence and focus on what's within your grasp. It's a small but profound shift that can make all the difference. One of the most paralyzing aspects of social anxiety is the fear of judgment. That nagging thought that others are scrutinizing you, forming negative opinions, or silently criticizing your every move. It's a fear so common, yet so impactful, that it can make you withdraw or avoid situations entirely. But what if this fear is mostly a creation of your own mind? The Stoics believed that the way we perceive something, not the thing itself, determines how we feel about it. In other words, it's not the situation that causes your anxiety, but the story your mind tells about it. Seneca, one of the great Stoic philosophers, wrote extensively about the irrational nature of fear. He explained that we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. This means that many of the scenarios we dread never actually happen. They are projections of our minds. For example, if you're at a party and you stumble over your words, you might convince yourself that everyone is silently judging you, labeling you as awkward or incompetent. But the truth, most people likely didn't even notice, or if they did, have already moved on. Our fear of judgment is often an exaggeration, a fiction we've created. The Stoics teach us to reframe these fears, to look at them from a rational and broader perspective. Epictetus urged us to question our assumptions and ask, is this truly as bad as I imagine? Let's use a historical Stoic anecdote to illustrate this. Imagine a Roman senator standing before the Senate, facing criticism for his ideas. To someone consumed by the fear of judgment, this could feel like the end of the world, a public rejection of status and honor. But a Stoic like Cato the Younger would see it differently. He focused not on how others perceived him, but on whether he was acting according to his values. If he believed his ideas were virtuous and just, no amount of criticism could shake him. His focus was internal, not external. This shift in perspective is where freedom from fear begins. When you feel social anxiety creeping in, think about how you might be magnifying the situation in your mind. Ask yourself, am I reacting to reality or just my interpretation of it? What's the worst that could really happen here? Often, you'll find that the fear holds far less weight than you'd thought. Seneca also suggested a fascinating exercise to confront fears directly. He encouraged practicing gratitude and contentment as a way to reframe difficult situations. For instance, instead of walking into a social setting and fearing criticism, what if you mentally rehearsed gratitude instead? Imagine appreciating the opportunity to connect with others or silently thanking someone for simply engaging with you, no matter how the conversation unfolds. This practice shifts your focus away from judgment and toward connection, breaking the cycle of self-consciousness. Let's take a practical example. Picture yourself meeting someone new. Instead of worrying, what if they don't like me, try reframing it as, how can I show kindness or gratitude in this interaction? By changing your focus from being judged to giving something positive, you remove the pressure of trying to control their opinion. This reframing empowers you and creates a calmer, more grounded presence. Ultimately, Stoicism reminds us that fear of judgment is just a distorted lens through which we view the world. By stepping back and questioning our thoughts, practicing gratitude, and focusing on what we can control, we begin to see social interactions for what they truly are: opportunities for connection, not trials to be survived. Ask yourself this: how many times have I exaggerated the fear of judgment in my own mind? And what could change if I reframed those moments instead? Imagine this: you're at a dinner party, surrounded by people chatting and laughing. But instead of enjoying the moment, your mind begins to race. What should I say next? Do they think I'm boring? Did I embarrass myself with that last comment? These anxious thoughts spiral until you're no longer really there. Instead, you're trapped inside your head, replaying imaginary scenarios and bracing for outcomes that might never even happen. Sound familiar? Now let's rewind. Picture the same setting, but this time you're fully present. Instead of worrying about what to say or how you're coming across, you're focused on the conversation in front of you. You're listening intently, noticing the tone of someone's voice, the laughter in the background, the warmth of the room. When it's time to speak, the words flow naturally because you're grounded in the moment, not tangled in overthinking. The difference: it's not the situation that changed, it's where you placed your attention. This is the power of presence, and it's a concept that Marcus Aurelius, one of the most renowned Stoic philosophers, emphasized throughout his reflections in Meditations. He wrote, "Confine yourself to the present." In this simple but profound statement, he reminds us that much of our suffering comes from dwelling on the past or worrying about the future, neither of which we can control. When our attention is firmly anchored in the here and now, the grip of anxiety begins to loosen. For those experiencing social anxiety, practicing presence can be transformative. Social anxiety thrives on what-ifs and imagined outcomes. What if I say something foolish? What if they think I'm awkward? But none of these fears exist in the present moment. They are mental projections, stories created entirely in your mind. By redirecting your focus to the now, you strip these fears of their power because anxiety cannot exist in the present. It needs the past or future to fuel it. Here's how you can start shifting your focus to the present in social situations. Begin with something simple, your breath. If you're feeling overwhelmed, take a deep breath in and notice the sensation of the air entering your lungs. Then exhale slowly, paying attention to the release. This small act helps pull your mind out of anxious thoughts and back into your body, grounding you in reality. Another powerful tool is active listening. When you're in a conversation, instead of thinking about how you'll respond or what the other person might think of you, focus entirely on what they're saying. Notice their tone, their expressions, and the words they use. Not only will this help calm your racing mind, but it will also make you a more present and engaging conversationalist, a win-win in any social setting. Let's try something together. Think back to the last time you were in a social situation. Maybe it was a meeting at work, a family gathering, or even a casual chat with a friend. Ask yourself, how present were you? Were you truly focused on the moment, or were you caught up in analyzing and second-guessing everything? If you're like most of us, there's probably room to strengthen your sense of presence. Reflecting on this can help you identify opportunities to approach similar moments differently next time. Presence doesn't mean shutting down all your thoughts or feelings. It's about acknowledging them without letting them hijack your experience. As Marcus Aurelius also wrote, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. In social situations, this means noticing when anxious thoughts arise but choosing not to follow them. Instead, bring yourself back to what's happening around you. What do you hear, see, feel? The more you practice this, the easier it becomes to stay grounded. So, the next time you find yourself slipping into anxious thoughts, pause and ask, what's happening right now? What can I notice in this moment? By practicing presence, you can start to reclaim control over your mind and experience social situations as they truly are rather than through the lens of fear. Discomfort is something most of us instinctively try to avoid. It's that uneasy feeling in your chest, the sweaty palms, the racing thoughts telling you to retreat. In social situations, discomfort often shows up as that urge to skip the networking event, avoid the phone call, or let someone else take the lead in the conversation. But what if we stopped seeing discomfort as something to run from and started viewing it as a tool for growth and transformation? This is exactly how the Stoics approached adversity. Seneca, one of the most influential Stoic philosophers, once wrote, "Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body." The idea here is simple. Just as your muscles grow stronger by lifting weights, your mind and character grow stronger by facing challenges head-on. Avoiding discomfort may feel safe in the moment, but over time, it weakens your resilience. If you never confront what makes you uneasy, you'll never build the confidence to overcome it. For those struggling with social anxiety, this reframing can be a game changer. Let's look at how this applies to social situations. When anxiety tells you to avoid an interaction, you're actually reinforcing the belief that social settings are threats to be feared. The more you avoid, the harder it becomes to step outside your comfort zone. But the Stoics teach us to embrace these moments of discomfort as opportunities. Marcus Aurelius, another great Stoic thinker, reminded himself daily that adversity is not something to dread but something to use. He wrote, "The impediment to action advances action." What stands in the way becomes the way. In other words, the very thing you fear becomes the path to your growth. So how does this play out in practical terms? Let's take a scenario like attending a social gathering where you don't know many people. Instead of focusing on the discomfort, wondering if people will like you or if you'll say the wrong thing, you could approach it as a challenge with purpose. You're not just attending the event, you're training your resilience. Every time you engage in even a small interaction, you're building the mental muscle of confidence and self-assurance. It doesn't have to be perfect, it doesn't have to feel easy. The fact that you're doing it at all is the win. To take Stoic principles even further, try setting small, attainable social goals that push you gently outside your comfort zone. For example, let's say you're someone who finds it hard to start conversations. Instead of putting pressure on yourself to become the life of the party, set a simple goal for your next outing. Introduce yourself to just one person. That's it. Once you do it, acknowledge your progress, no matter how small. The Stoics believed in steady, consistent effort. Over time, small actions compound into significant growth. Here's another exercise inspired by Stoic reflection. After a challenging social experience, take a moment to reflect on what you learned. Maybe the conversation didn't flow perfectly, but hey, you spoke up. Maybe you stumbled over your words, but you stayed present and didn't retreat. Write these reflections down as reminders of your progress the next time you face a similar situation. Seneca often emphasized the importance of self-review, not as a way to criticize yourself, but as a way to grow deliberately. Remember, growth never feels comfortable in the moment. It's awkward, it's messy, and sometimes it feels like you're failing. But the Stoics would remind us that discomfort is a sign that you're on the right track. It means you're challenging yourself, stepping into new territory, and building the strength to handle whatever comes next. Think of it this way: every time you lean into an uncomfortable social situation, you're not just enduring it, you're expanding your capacity to thrive. So, instead of avoiding those moments, ask yourself, how can I use this discomfort today to become stronger, more courageous, and more at peace with myself? Have you ever noticed how much of modern culture revolves around external validation? Social media likes, compliments from friends, approval from colleagues, it's everywhere. We're taught, often indirectly, that our worth is measured by how others see us. Post a picture, and if it doesn't get enough attention, you question yourself. Speak up in a meeting, and if your idea isn't acknowledged, self-doubt creeps in. When you think about it, so much of our stress, including social anxiety, stems from chasing this external validation. But here's the question: can you ever really control what others think of you? And even if you could, would their approval truly make you happy? The Stoics would argue that the answer is no. Epictetus, in particular, had strong views on this. He said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." Now, that's not exactly what we want to hear, is it? But his point is profound. If you spend your life chasing the opinions of others, you'll never find peace. Why? Because external approval is fleeting and unpredictable. One day you're praised, the next you're criticized, and both are completely out of your control. True contentment, according to Stoicism, comes from finding worth within yourself. It's about detaching from the need for validation and focusing on living in alignment with your own values. Let's consider how this plays out in real life. Think about a time when you held back from saying or doing something because you were worried about being judged. Maybe you were in a group discussion and didn't share your honest opinion because you feared it wouldn't be well received. That hesitation, it came from placing too much value on external validation. Now imagine the same situation, but you approached it with a Stoic mindset. Instead of worrying about how others might react, you focus on what's within your control, speaking your truth with clarity and respect. Whether others agree or disagree becomes irrelevant because your worth isn't tied to their reaction. You've done your part, acted in accordance with your principles, and that's enough. Here's a simple analogy to explain this shift. Think of external validation like a weather report. Some days it's bright and sunny, full of praise and approval. Other days it's stormy with criticism or indifference, but just like the weather, you can't control it. What you can control is how you dress for the day. You can carry an umbrella when it rains or enjoy the sun when it shines, knowing that neither the good nor the bad defines you. Your inner worth is constant, unshaken by external changes. Now let's make this practical. A good way to start detaching from the need for validation is to practice small, intentional acts of self-reliance. For example, the next time you're in a social situation, challenge yourself to give an honest opinion even if you think it might not be popular. This could be as simple as saying, "Actually, I see it differently," when someone shares a viewpoint you don't agree with. At first, it might feel uncomfortable, but see if you can shift your focus away from how others react to how it feels to stay true to yourself. Over time, you'll notice that speaking authentically isn't as terrifying as it seems, and the freedom from needing approval is incredibly liberating. Epictetus also offered us this reassurance. Whoever then wishes to be free, let him neither wish for anything nor avoid anything which depends on others. If he does not observe this rule, he must be a slave. This might sound harsh, but it's a call to reclaim our power. As long as you rely on external validation for your sense of self, you're giving others control over your happiness. But when you turn inward, focusing on your own principles and actions, you unlock a sense of freedom and peace that no external opinion can ever provide. So the next time you catch yourself seeking approval, whether it's a compliment, a like, or a smile, pause and ask, what truly matters here? Am I acting in line with my values? Little by little, as you shift your focus inward, you'll start to feel less weighed down by social anxiety. The need for validation will loosen its grip, replaced by something far more powerful, self-respect and inner calm. Picture this, you're dreading an upcoming work meeting where you'll need to present your ideas. Your heart is racing just thinking about it. What if I stumble over my words? What if no one likes my suggestions? What if I completely embarrass myself? These thoughts loop endlessly in your mind, amplifying your anxiety with every passing hour. This kind of anticipation is all too familiar for many of us who experience social anxiety, blowing potential outcomes out of proportion and imagining the worst in ways that feel overwhelming and paralyzing. But here's where the Stoics introduce a practice that can turn this fear into preparation: negative visualization. Stoicism teaches us that one of the most effective ways to address fear is to confront it mentally before it even happens. Instead of avoiding the worst-case scenarios swirling in your mind, you bring them to the surface, examine them calmly, and most importantly, accept them. This exercise is known as negative visualization, or premeditatio malorum, which translates to the premeditation of evils. But don't let the word evil scare you. What it really means is imagining potential challenges or setbacks before they occur so that you can develop resilience and reduce the emotional impact if they do. Let's return to the upcoming work meeting. What if, instead of letting the anxiety build unchecked, you intentionally sit down and imagine a worst-case scenario? You might visualize stumbling over your words during the presentation. You might picture a moment of awkward silence after you share your idea, or even the possibility of someone disagreeing with you. These things aren't pleasant to think about, but here's the surprising truth. When you visualize them in a calm and controlled state, they often feel far less terrifying than when they linger as vague, unspoken fears in the back of your mind. You realize that even if these mishaps happen, you could survive them. The discomfort would be temporary and life would go on. The beauty of negative visualization is that it prepares you without catastrophizing. By imagining challenges ahead of time, you train your mind to respond rationally when faced with difficulties. Instead of being blindsided by fear in the moment, you feel a sense of familiarity and readiness because you've been there before in your mind. It's like rehearsing for a performance. The more you run through the scenarios, the more confident you feel when it's time to step on stage. This Stoic practice also reduces the power of social anxiety by shifting your perspective. Often, the unknown is what makes a situation feel overwhelming. But when you take the time to mentally explore these possibilities, you strip them of their mystery. You realize that, yes, maybe you'll stumble over a word or two, but people are unlikely to remember or judge you harshly for it. Maybe someone will disagree with you, but that's a normal and expected part of collaboration. And if there's an awkward silence, it will pass just like every moment before it. Here's a simple exercise you can try for yourself. The next time you feel anxious about a social situation, sit in a quiet place and take a few deep breaths. Then imagine the situation playing out. Visualize the worst-case scenario not in a panicked way, but as if you're observing it from a distance. Maybe you forget someone's name at a party, or you accidentally spill your drink. Picture these mishaps calmly and then mentally walk yourself through how you'd handle them. Would you smile and laugh it off, apologize and move forward? Notice how much lighter these imagined fears feel when you accept them without resistance. Finally, remind yourself that even if these outcomes occur, they won't define you. They're simply moments, and moments pass. By engaging in negative visualization, you're not setting yourself up for failure. You're freeing yourself from the fear of failure. You're proving to yourself that even the worst-case scenario is manageable and that you have the resilience to handle it. As the Stoic philosopher Seneca wisely said, "He who has anticipated the coming of troubles takes away their power when they arrive." Instead of being at the mercy of your anxiety, you become proactive, grounded, and prepared. So the next time you face a daunting social situation, ask yourself, what's the worst that could happen? And then calmly prepare yourself to meet it head-on. Social anxiety thrives on our desire for approval, the need to be liked, respected, or even admired by others. It whispers to us, don't make a mistake, or say the right thing, or they'll think less of you. But here's the thing, this pursuit of approval can feel like chasing your own shadow, something that's always just out of reach. The Stoics, however, offer a radically different approach. They teach us that instead of focusing on how others perceive us, we should focus on living virtuously, on embodying qualities like courage, kindness, honesty, and integrity. Because ultimately, what matters isn't whether people approve of us, but whether we've stayed true to the values we hold dear. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, often reflected on this. He wrote, "Just that you do the right thing, the rest doesn't matter. Think about that for a moment, the rest doesn't matter." In this one line, Marcus reminds us that our worth isn't tied to someone else's opinion or reaction. Whether someone praises you or criticizes you, agrees or disagrees, it doesn't change who you are as a person. What truly defines you is your commitment to doing what is right, regardless of how others respond. Now, let's bring this idea into the context of social anxiety. Imagine you're about to meet someone new, and you feel that familiar nervousness bubbling up. Instead of worrying, will they like me? Will I say the right thing? Shift your focus inward. Ask yourself, how can I embody my values in this interaction? How can I be kind, honest, or courageous? This shift is powerful because it takes the spotlight off external approval, something you can't control, and places it on virtues which are entirely within your grasp. Let's break this down with an example. Say you're at work and there's a heated discussion happening in a meeting. You have an idea, but you're afraid to speak up because you worry people might dismiss it or think it's not good enough. Instead of letting the fear of judgment hold you back, consider this. What virtues could you choose to prioritize here? Could you practice courage by expressing your idea? Could you show honesty by sharing your perspective? even if it's different from what others are saying. When you approach the situation through the lens of virtue, the outcome, whether people agree or disagree, becomes less important, because regardless of how they react, you've acted in alignment with your principles, and that's what truly counts. What's incredible about this shift is how liberating it can be. When you focus on being the best version of yourself, on living up to your own standards instead of someone else's, you'll find that the weight of social anxiety starts to lighten. The fear of judgment fades because you're no longer chasing approval. Instead, you're grounded in something far more meaningful, your own values and sense of purpose. So here's a reflective question for you. The next time you're facing a social situation that makes you anxious, ask yourself, what virtues could I prioritize in this moment? Perhaps it's practicing patience in a conversation that feels challenging. Maybe it's showing kindness by making a shy person feel included. Or maybe it's being courageous enough to introduce yourself to someone new. Whatever it is, let your values guide you, not the need for approval. Remember, living virtuously isn't about being perfect or getting everything right. It's about making a conscious choice to act in alignment with what you believe is good and right in any given moment. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. When you let this principle steer you, social anxiety stops being an obstacle and transforms into an opportunity, a chance to live with greater authenticity and purpose, no matter who's watching. Self-reflection is one of the most powerful tools we have for personal growth, and the Stoics understood this deeply. In their view, self-reflection wasn't just a passive exercise. It was an active practice of examining one's thoughts, actions, and behaviors to align them more closely with one's values. If you're struggling with social anxiety, self-reflection offers a way to step back, understand your patterns, and make conscious adjustments to how you approach social interactions. It's not about judging yourself harshly or reliving uncomfortable moments. It's about learning and improving. Let's start with a simple example. Imagine you had a conversation earlier in the day that left you feeling uneasy. Maybe you felt like you talked too much, or perhaps you hesitated to share your opinion and later regretted it. Without reflection, these moments can pile up, fueling feelings of self-doubt or frustration. But with reflection, you can turn them into opportunities for growth. You might ask yourself, why did I feel the need to talk so much? Was I trying to fill the silence because I was nervous? Or what held me back from sharing my thoughts? Was I too focused on worrying about what others might think? By identifying the underlying patterns, you gain clarity on what's driving your anxiety, and from there you can begin to make changes. Seneca, one of the great Stoic philosophers, emphasized the importance of nightly self-reflection as a way to grow and align your actions with your principles. He suggested that at the end of each day, we should review our behaviors and choices. He wrote, "When the light has been removed and my wife has fallen silent, I examine my entire day and go back over what I have done and said, hiding nothing from myself, passing nothing by." Seneca wasn't interested in beating himself up for mistakes. Instead, he saw this process as a means of self-improvement, an honest but compassionate review of his day. Think about how this practice could help with social anxiety. By reflecting on your interactions at the end of the day, you allow yourself to process what happened without the pressure of the moment. For instance, if you ruminated during a social gathering because you felt judged, nightly reflection can help you ask, was that judgment real or did I create it in my mind? What could I do differently next time to stay more present? Over time, this habit builds awareness and helps isolate specific triggers for your anxiety, making it easier to address them. If you're wondering how to get started, consider adopting a simple journaling practice. At the end of your day, take 5 to 10 minutes to write down 3 things. First, What went well in your social interactions, moments when you felt confident, engaged, or authentic? Second, what didn't go as planned, situations where social anxiety crept in or held you back? And third, what you can do differently moving forward. For example, you might write, "I spoke up in the meeting today, even though I was nervous. That was good. But I noticed I kept second-guessing myself after I spoke. Next time, I'll remind myself that it's okay not to be perfect." By writing these reflections down, you create a record of your progress and a map for where to focus your efforts. What's powerful about this practice is how it shifts the narrative. Instead of seeing social anxiety as a fixed trait, you begin to see it as something you can influence through small, consistent adjustments. Each day becomes an opportunity to learn and grow. Over time, you'll notice patterns, thoughts, or behaviors that repeatedly trigger your anxiety, but you'll also start to see moments of success and resilience that you might have overlooked before. Self-reflection, especially when paired with journaling, isn't about achieving perfection. It's about becoming more honest with yourself, identifying areas for improvement, and celebrating small wins along the way. Ask yourself this: what would change if, instead of critiquing yourself in the heat of the moment, you saved that energy for calm, thoughtful reflection at the end of the day? By following Seneca's advice and dedicating time to this practice, you can start to understand your social anxiety better and take meaningful steps toward overcoming it. What will this moment mean in a year's time? Think about the last social interaction that made you anxious, whether it was a presentation at work, a difficult conversation, or even just meeting new people at an event. At the time, it might have felt like the stakes were impossibly high, but now, looking back from the vantage point of weeks, months, or even years later, how much significance does that moment really hold? Chances are the intensity of those feelings has faded, and what once felt overwhelming has been reduced to a passing memory, or perhaps forgotten altogether. This is the essence of impermanence, a central idea in Stoicism that can be a powerful antidote to social anxiety. The Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius often reflected on the fleeting nature of life and our worries. In Meditations he wrote, "Keep in mind how fast things pass by and are gone, those that are now and those to come." He reminds us that no matter how significant a moment feels right now, time will inevitably soften its impact. The discomfort, fear, or embarrassment you might feel in a social situation is not permanent, it's temporary, just like everything else in life. By embracing this notion of impermanence, we can step back from our anxiety and view social interactions with a broader, calmer perspective. Let's consider an example. Imagine you're at a networking event and you accidentally forget someone's name during an introduction. In the moment, it might feel like a catastrophic mistake, one that confirms your worst fears about being awkward or judged. But will this moment matter in a month, a year? Will the other person even remember it? Probably not. What feels urgent and overwhelming in the moment is often trivial when placed in the larger context of life. Embracing impermanence allows us to let go of the magnified importance we place on these small, fleeting interactions. This mindset can be transformative when applied to social anxiety. Often, the fear of making a mistake or being judged feels unbearable because we treat the moment as if it's permanent, as if the outcome will define us forever. But Stoicism teaches us to see each experience as just one small chapter in our ongoing story. It's not the whole book, it's just a passing moment. When you adopt this perspective, the pressure to perform perfectly begins to fade, and you can approach social interactions with greater ease. Marcus Aurelius also wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." While this might sound stark at first, it's a reminder to live in the present, free from the weight of imagined future outcomes. If life is fleeting and nothing lasts forever, Why not focus on making the most of the moment you're in rather than letting fear take you out of it? This doesn't mean ignoring your feelings of anxiety, but rather reframing them. Instead of thinking, "What if I mess up?" you can remind yourself, "Even if I do, this moment is temporary, it will pass." To put this into practice, try asking yourself a grounding question the next time anxiety starts to creep in. What will this moment mean in a year's time? Picture yourself looking back from the future where the intensity of your emotions has faded, and this moment is just a small, distant memory. This exercise doesn't dismiss your feelings, but it helps you put them into perspective. It reminds you that no single interaction, no matter how awkward or uncomfortable, defines you or your worth. When you start seeing social interactions as temporary experiences, just one of the many moments that make up the flow of life, you free yourself from the need to get everything right. Instead of overanalyzing what people might think or worrying about every word you say, you can focus on simply being present, showing up as your authentic self, and letting the moment unfold. After all, nothing lasts forever, not even the anxiety you feel right now. And with this perspective, you can approach social situations with a little less fear and a lot more peace. As we come to the end of this journey together, let's take a moment to reflect on the key principles we've explored and how they can help you navigate social anxiety with greater clarity and strength. Stoicism offers us a timeless framework for facing life's challenges, including the ones that live in our minds. By focusing on what we can control, embracing presence, building resilience, and living according to our values, we can begin to loosen the grip of fear and reclaim our inner peace. We started with the concept of control, the idea that while we can't dictate how others think of us or the outcomes of social situations, we can control our thoughts, our actions, and how we choose to respond. This simple yet profound realization empowers us to stop wasting energy on the uncontrollable and instead focus inward where our true power lies. Then we explored the importance of presence. Anxiety often pulls us away from the moment, trapping us in regrets about the past or worries about the future. But as Marcus Aurelius taught, confine yourself to the present. By anchoring ourselves in the here and now, whether through our breath, active listening, or mindful observation, we can quiet those persistent what-if thoughts and fully engage with the people and experiences around us. We also discussed resilience and how discomfort, while unpleasant, is an opportunity for growth. Seneca reminded us that difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body. By leaning into uncomfortable situations rather than avoiding them, we train ourselves to face fear with courage. Each small step outside your comfort zone is a victory, building confidence like a muscle over time. And finally, we talked about virtue, the Stoic belief that what truly matters is not how others perceive us, but how we live in alignment with our values. Whether it's embodying kindness, honesty, or courage in a social interaction, focusing on your virtues removes the pressure of external validation. What others think fades into the background because you know you're acting in a way that's true to yourself. Let's close with an inspiring reminder from Epictetus. No man is free who is not master of himself. Social anxiety may feel like a cage at times, but the key to unlocking it has always been within you. By practicing control, presence, resilience, and virtue, you take one step closer to mastering your thoughts and emotions and ultimately regaining your freedom. So here's a question to take with you. How will you begin applying these Stoic principles to face your social fears? Will you practice letting go of what's outside your control? Anchor yourself in the present moment, take a brave step into discomfort, or focus on living by your values. The choice is yours to make, and every journey begins with a single step. If this video has sparked something within you, I encourage you to share your thoughts in the comments below. What resonated with you most? What insights will you carry forward into your life? And if you know someone who could benefit from Stoicism's wisdom, feel free to share this video with them. Together, we can continue to grow, learn, and support one another on this journey. Thank you for watching, and remember, your power lies in focusing on what you can control and living authentically, one moment at a time.